was studying fashion design at London Uni, and so at Westminster, sorry, in London. Yeah, so I think it was at one summer or something like that. He basically was telling me about London Fashion Week, and it might sound crazy, but I didn't really know what London Fashion Week was. I'd heard of fashion weeks, obviously on TV. You'd see like New York Fashion Week or things on TV, runways and catwalks, but I never knew anything really about it, and I didn't have any understanding of that industry at all. And studying kind of creative media, I was into photography, videography, and so we saw it as like an opportunity to basically go. He was there for the fashion, I was there to probably shoot, but also to kind of just get an understanding of that scene. And what happened really with that was we went to the first uh, like London Fashion Week event, and it was like a women's wear event. Started to network with people, started to make friends, um, and that kind of started my career shooting uh, for like fashion clients. So that ultimately started with street style, and that was just me basically on the street shooting models, kind of influencers, editors of magazines, celebrities, whoever who came to the shows, obviously in and out. So for anyone who doesn't know, obviously what street style photography is or what street style is, that is kind of the gist. Um, and so it started with that, and then started to work for, which I presume most people who are watching this, Pause magazine. So they're a menswear magazine, and Johnson, who runs that, this is going back 2014 or 2015. So it's quite a long time ago, and they weren't obviously anything like on scale to what they are now. So I was shooting for them for free, just like giving them photos, stuff that they could use on their Instagram and their socials. And then through that, obviously I did again another London Fashion Week men's, then I did women's, then I did men's, and made more connections and basically just developed better relationships, and ultimately started working with bigger clients. And that's how I kind of really initially got into the fashion industry. And from that, that's been a 8 year, 9 year um, kind of career for me. A little bit on and off throughout. I wouldn't say it's been a consistent 9 year, me being in shooting all the time. But I used to do a lot of like London, Milan, Paris, kind of every year, and cover for magazines and online publications and such. Um, so that's how that kind of started. And then through that period, I really wanted to stay involved in fashion, but I didn't know how and what I wanted to do. And my love for photography and the creative aspects of it would have its kind of roller coasters up and down, as I'm sure many photographers and creatives have this same kind of thing that happen. And I wanted something like structured and stable that I could still be involved in, still be creative in, but also was like a something different as a business that didn't necessarily just involve me and everything kind of all the weight of it was on me as a creative. So I guess that in line with the fact that it was easier to make and to run clothing brands and start them and to start kind of businesses like that, it got easier and easier. It'd always been something I guess I wanted to do, and it just seemed like a good time about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, is when I basically started coming up with some of the concepts for Targa. And yeah, it was just an idea at that point. And then as I kind of really, really wanted to push it, I'd saved some money and decided like I'll just give it 100%. And that's basically where we're at right now. So it's been, as I said, 6 months since we launched the brand. Um, and yeah, we're just obviously learning every day and just trying to kind of do better and better and give people better products and provide better kind of quality content and everything.
Sounds a good journey, and just want to sort of continue on to where you're at now with Targa.
Yeah.
Where does the name Targa come from? What does the brand mean, and what does the brand mean to you?
Okay. So the name is not. I would love for it to be a kind of maybe more of an elaborate story, or I guess yeah, like something that sounds maybe a bit cooler. Maybe because it's my story, it doesn't always. I think when it's your own thing, it maybe doesn't sound as cool. But I've always, as a kid, loved motorsport. I loved motorbikes. I used to love motocross. I used to have a bike when I was like 4 years old, 5 years old, and I've always been into kind of that more extreme stuff. And then obviously with cars as well. And really, it was just a kind of light bulb moment, if that makes sense. I was just sat gathering ideas for names, and obviously was just throwing loads and loads of different things out there. And some of them were just too long. And I was like, if I want to represent anything, I want it to be this simple, bold statement, you know, as a brand. I want it to kind of give off that, you know, through a name. And so yeah, just basically this moment just came, and I was thinking about my favorite car, which is it's a Porsche 911 Targa. And then I was like looking at the name Targa, and I thought, is this something that could maybe work? Like, obviously, it's great to have a name, but there's also the kind of legal side of it. So you've got to be super careful, because I'm sure people, again, who are watching this know about the Nike Cortez whole thing, and then they actually ended up working together. But yeah, that's really where it stemmed from, and it was just like probably from the love of like the cars, and that's where that name kind of just arose. And then I checked, if it was something that we could work with, and it seems like it is something we can work with. So yeah, ultimately that's kind of where that name came from. Um, Moving on to your second question, which was, what does the brand mean to me? Or what was the second question? Was the brand
Yeah. So what do you want the brand to stand for, or what does it mean
stand
to
for?
mean to you?
Yeah, I guess I've always felt very passionate about living like truly and freely, and not being kind of held down or restricted by, um, I guess, society, or like it's kind of like boxes that it tries to put you in. And I know that, again, it can sound like such a cliche, because I know this is something that a lot of people say, but I just feel like I want to almost try and authentically portray how I view the world, or how I'd love the world to be seen through the brand, and and ultimately through my background in kind of like film, photography, and direction and stuff like that. Like, I want to visually tell that story, not just create the clothes, but like to really just create like an actual like atmosphere and world, like its own little universe, that feels like, by being a part of that you're really kind of living that truly, not just saying that, but you actually are like kind of living that kind of life. Um, and so yeah, I guess there's aspects, like, again, with other brands like 2J's or New Project, it's like fun and playful, but I love how they kind of involve this kind of wild side, and not so traditional. Again, like a lot of brands that are obviously kind of traditional brands, it's very clean cut, and everything's very simple, and everything's very kind of tidy. And as much as I love that to some degree, I want to kind of just be that slightly different brand that can convey those things in that kind of free, wild way. So we've got so many
Do you,
projects and so many ideas of things that we're going to be doing over the next 12 months to 2 years. And so I feel like by seeing it now at such an early stage, you're going to really follow the journey, and how we can just get better and better and better. It's so exciting for me. Um, but yeah,
do you think your environment plays into that? So currently, where you're based, do you think that sort of feeds into what the brand stands for as well?
definitely. Yeah. I think, again, just going back before, so my kind of life in short was raised in Botswana, which is in Southern Africa, for 10 years, then moved to the UK. Lived in the UK for like another 15 years or 14 years, and then moved to Australia for 2 years. And now I'm living in Bali. So it's been quite a lot of travel in there. But all those experiences have definitely made a massive impact on how, again, how this brand is different and how it's unique, because those experiences and those things that I've experienced are kind of how I want to put that into the brand, and show that, and Now living in Bali, it's like a completely different lifestyle. And the great thing about it is it fits me as a person and it fits the brand so well. Because again, we want to be kind of an outside brand, you know, I know it sounds so weird to say that, but like it's about the freedom. It's about being out there. It's about kind of like, you know, pushing the boundaries and going a bit crazy, but doing that in a kind of in a really cool way. So it's super playful, and I think a lot of it is just going to be down to how we can tell that story and trying to create that, you know, in the best way possible, um, to everybody and to all the people that follow us.
Yeah, that makes sense because I think that's the things from the conversations we've had
Yeah,
about discussing the brand and building that brand story and brand image.
for
I
sure.
think is probably one of the most important things to help people relate to and buy into. But I think it's also good to hear it from you of where it comes from or what you want it to stand for,
Yeah,
because I think obviously it helps with the conversations we've had that I understand your thinking, but then when you hear the way you talk about the brand and then see the way the imagery currently relates to it, it
yeah,
starts to make a lot more sense about what you're trying to build and put together.
absolutely.
Um, and I think having that is a really important thing, as we've discussed before, to get people to really want to buy into something and buy into an ethos of what the brand
Yeah,
stands for and how people can resonate to it. Because as we know, it's very easy to just slap a name on a t-shirt, but
of course.
what does it mean? What does it stand for? And that's probably
Yeah,
one of the most important things that I really think you've got your head around, and what you want the brand to be.
yeah,
Um, and I think that lifestyle that currently you experience in Bali, I think really works, ties in well with the brand. Um, in terms of the drop and the products that you've got released now, do you want to give people a quick top line of what you started with, what you've currently got available?
yeah. So we're currently we dropped our first drop in January, and that is I'm actually wearing it now, which is the box print raglan tees. So it's just these seam cut here, like an old school baseball style tee, with our kind of just staple box print signature logo here. Um, they're the two that we currently have. It's in a brown and white, and then in a black and white. But moving forward, there's going to be so much kind of diversity in the product range. Obviously, being such a small and new brand, we're obviously limited on kind of financial capacity. Like we didn't have £100,000 to start a brand or 50,000. You know, we started. I mean, I started with, you know, not that much money. Like, so it's been it's been hard, but like the main thing is we're trying to grow organically and build a real community around the brand and try to find people that really want to just wear it and be a part of that and like see that story, you know, like see that grow and like see the brand grow. And yeah, like so many exciting things happening, but other products, obviously, things like what we've got here, kind of like a sample of it's like a camo piece with like a canvas. So it's like a cotton canvas, similar to the Carhartt cotton. Um, and denim pieces, denim shorts. We're bringing out some more t-shirts. I won't reveal like too much on that yet, but um, there's a few pieces we're going to release over the rest of this year. We also have some headwear, some nice caps and hats that we're going to be dropping, which is really exciting. It's just, again, it's like the business in fashion is like, it's very complicated. And I don't know if this is something that people are like interested in hearing, but obviously it's great having like these designs and, you know, having the products there, but just to get to the point of having a good product is, you know, there's the whole supply chain, you know, finding suppliers. That in itself is super tricky, you know, finding the right people, getting the right MOQs, so the minimum order quantities that works with the supplier and works with you, something that you can afford to do. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. Like, I'd love to talk about that. I mean, I don't know how much time we've got to kind of discuss all of those parts of it, but it's I feel like
Because
it's
that
valuable information though for people to know, because I really feel like if you want to start a brand, or if you're just interested in that, seeing like one of the biggest hurdles you're probably going to start off with is just getting the clothes, like getting everything. And if you're a
there you go.
perfectionist like me, because I am the worst person for perfectionism, which is like, it's a great thing, but also a terrible thing, because it means like just I'm so locked in until I'm absolutely happy with everything. Um, yeah, it can be a detriment to time sometimes. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, um, the main thing for me is also just releasing a product that I'm really happy with, and I will refuse to release anything that I don't think's a quality product. So that's also something that's really like stands at the backbone of the brand. Like, it's not about just putting a print on a Gildan t-shirt, or you know, everything we've got is custom. Like, these are custom, obviously custom cut and sewn from organic cotton in Portugal, from a leading Portuguese factory. Um, and yeah, it's like the price, in my opinion, is a really fair price for like that product. And again, it sells itself. I think once you can tell that story, and it doesn't really matter. I think people are buying into the brand again, not buying um, just because of the price tag, as we know with luxury brands and loads of other brands. But yeah, sorry to interrupt.
That was what that was one of the things I was going to ask you is like with your situation of being between Australia and Bali,
Yeah.
how have you found managing that supply chain, and what have been the biggest challenges for you of obviously getting the product from place to place, getting the samples right?
Yeah.
What has been the hardest part of that for you?
So many hard things.
Everything, everything maybe.
Everything is hard, and I don't want to put anybody off, but like, the reality is business is hard. Like, business in general is not easy, and it's not something that you should think is just, and I think everyone makes this mistake. I mean, when we put in the orders for the very first sample, so when we sampled these t-shirts, obviously we sampled them many, like 3 or 4 or 5 times, made sure the cut was right, made sure the fabric was right, got the print right, and everything was correct. And that obviously takes some time, longer than you expect, like 6 months. You think it's going to take a month maybe to get back and forth, and then you just push it. Um, but it really is something that can take a bit of time. But then, even then, I think you imagine you're going to sell more. And I think unless you're really, really in a great situation, or you have an incredible kind of network of people, like, I always feel like most people overestimate the sales. And that's just the truth. I'm not going to lie about that. Like, we didn't open the store online and just sell everything out. And I know some people do, and hats off, congratulations to those people, because that's an amazing thing to be able to do. But don't be also disheartened if you don't sell out, or you don't sell everything, or you don't, because the reality is, I think if you're really trying to create a brand that's got longevity, you shouldn't be so worried about just getting those small things. Like, it's about actually building the brand. You know, and again, looking back on what we did, probably, which was probably a bit of a mistake looking back, but again, something that inevitably I'm going to learn so much from, and have learned so much from, is like these quantities. Because we were stuck in a bit of a dilemma where our factory wouldn't drop the quantity any less than a certain amount, and we really wanted to work with this factory, and so we had to sacrifice that. Basically, we were going to have to buy a much bigger amount of stock. But then obviously the hard part of that is we have a lot of stock that we have to try and get rid of. So um, yeah, it can be hard. But just going back to what you were saying, the logistics, yeah, it's very interesting. I think it makes it really hard being based in Oz unless you have an Australian supplier, because Australian import taxes are high, and these are all the things again that you don't necessarily think about at the time. But if you're really serious about a brand and having stock, like our supplier obviously is in Portugal, so it's in Europe, that gets made there, and then it has to get exported from Portugal and then imported into Australia. And then when it's in Australia, we've had to pay duties and taxes on all of that stock. And then if people are buying back in Europe again, or in the UK or in America or wherever, we have to pay export on that again. So it's these little things that you don't necessarily think about, but I mean, I hope it helps some people here who are considering those things to really
Sure.
think about that, because if you're based in a foreign country and you can't get your stock or your suppliers locally or close to you, really, really think about that. And maybe having a warehouse or housing the product somewhere close to the factory, or maybe the factory will even hold some of that product for you, whatever, because that can be a huge, huge cost, and definitely something that you can save on, which is obviously great. We're all trying to not spend too much money. So
Is there anything from that process that you'd have done differently now, having tried and tested it, like for your future drops? Is there anything you think, oh, I wouldn't do that again, or I wish we didn't do that, other than the minimum order quantities?
I think, yeah, I mean, definitely, definitely. I think apart from the minimum orders, I think what I would have done differently is probably explored more suppliers. At the time, probably felt like the wrong thing to do because it felt like it was such a time consuming thing. But really, you can't, like, again, you can't sacrifice the product regardless. Like, if it takes you 3 months to find a supplier, or 6 months, or a year, in my opinion, obviously, again, you don't want to spend a year looking for a supplier, but I would rather spend a year looking for the right supplier than get a product that goes out to market with a mass, where it's such a high MOQ, or whatever, that can actually ultimately kind of be a negative on your kind of cash flow situation. So I think definitely look for suppliers. There's so many new suppliers out there, and again, amazing suppliers, either Europe, India, China, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. I mean, there's factories globally, so Turkey is obviously another one, the US, whatever fits you the best, or whatever kind of works with you with your budgets and whatever. I think what I'd probably look to do now is work ideally more locally, or if I'm still going to produce in Portugal, to see if there's basically like more local warehousing. So there's not an export, because the cost of the export was about 30% of our total cost of producing everything, which is, it's super high.
That's a
So
lot.
I could have warehoused those products in Portugal for the same price. And then even when it comes to like shipping out, if someone's in Europe, shipping from Portugal to Europe, or shipping from Portugal to London, or it's cheap. But shipping from Australia is obviously quite expensive. So again, that's our business because of where I'm located and where our stock is now located in Australia. Um, that's just how it is for us. But we've just got to work around that. I think if there's any Aussies or Australian people here who are looking to have a brand, I'd probably just say try and find someone in Australia to make it, because that is the cheapest thing you can do. Obviously, if you can get the right kind of quality.
Is there a reason you didn't go for an Australian supplier initially?
Initially, I think because we were, I mean, I don't think I even knew that I could get good factories in Australia. And I think Australia's actually really well known. They're known for their cotton, so they can get a lot of cotton. But to be honest, a lot of cotton just gets exported to China, and then it will usually come back, because it gets actually, like, the weaving process happens in the bigger factories in China and stuff, and in Europe and whatnot. So the cotton will come from farms in Australia, and then can go through that process and come back. But we just didn't have the suppliers. I couldn't find the suppliers. And again, there was a few, but the order quantities are just way too high. There were 1,000 units minimum, 600 units minimum. Some of them were bigger than that. Or if they were not based on product, but they were based on the yardage of the fabric, they were like 1,000 meters. And that's like, it's a lot. That's basically like 1,000 pieces or just under. So it was just out of our price. So we had to try and work around that, which was it was difficult. But again, the best thing about it is you just learn so much from that, and you can just use that now to push forward. And I think moving forward, we've now got different suppliers, and the same suppliers, but some new suppliers in place that can give us a better, much lower MOQ. So I think that's going to serve us a lot better moving forward. So we have a bit more control over that stock, and and ultimately the exclusivity. Because again, like we don't want to be the exclusivity for two reasons. I think we don't want to overproduce because I don't want to. I think it's just really bad for the environment and the world. Like just having producing stuff at high mass volumes that a lot of the time doesn't. For most brands, they have a high wastage. Massive percent that goes to wastage. So I want to try to keep that at as minimal as possible. But also it's great, it's the exclusivity side. So like not having so much of a product, and so especially with our kind of like strategy, we definitely want to try and keep those now moving forward lower. So when something runs out of stock, it may not come in again, or if it does come in, it might come in 6 months, or we might restock it in a year. So if you really want to grab it, you've got that kind of like you've only got so much time before that's going to be gone. And I think it's also a fun thing to play with because not only creates demand, but it means you can have different kind of capsule collections, small pieces, and you can mess around and see what people like and see what your kind of customer likes, and if there's certain things they like more, you can see that from kind of how that is perceived through your sales and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot to think about. I hope I'm not kind of blabbering on, but yeah, I mean, there's so many aspects of the business that you got to think about, and I'm just running this basically on my own, so it's a lot of work for sure.
And I know one of the things that we've put a lot of discussion into and a lot of work into the thinking of is the marketing and the
Yeah.
strategy of what we look to do going forward. But do you want to give people a sort of background of your thought process in terms of marketing the brand, how you've got it out there, what you think's worked, what you're looking to do going forward that you want to try?
Yeah. I think the strategy that we had initially was to, I think, try and use influence from people I knew personally or influencers that we could contact. And I think the kind of main strategy was to build up some hype on the brand and the product, and then obviously give pieces out to influencers, and then launch. But I think what we kind of did wrong, or the mistakes we made, were we had built up a bit of a kind of momentum, started creating some kind of momentum there, but we launched at a really awkward time. We launched just after Christmas, just before New Year's, and it's probably one of the worst times to launch a brand in hindsight. And so either people don't have money because they spent it all over on Christmas already, or they're saving the rest of their money for New Year's, whatever they're going to plan to do with their friends and people on New Year's. And then usually January, as most people in the UK know, like, I mean, I felt like this every January, is that's the time where I had the least amount of money after all of that Christmas period and stuff. So then we had the whole of January where it's like you're trying to, get people driving to create sales. So I think a timing thing, obviously, definitely like would have been different. But I think the strategies that worked, and just going back to that influencer kind of stuff, I think it's really important if you're going to use influencers to really hone in on who they are, how they resonate with your brand, not just any person. Because yes, you can have someone with 1 million followers, and as we discussed this before, we had some connections with some larger scale people, and it was like almost shocking because like those people didn't drive anywhere near what you'd expect them to drive because of who they are. But really, it wasn't because they don't have that power, but it's that the markets are just completely different. So we're trying to sell a
Not the
fashion
right fits,
item.
maybe.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to like note that. And so you're better off working with someone with 1,000 followers that is like really represents your brand than someone with 100,000 followers that say rides horses. You know what I mean? Because like, why would someone riding horses want to buy into the brand? It's just, it doesn't work as well. It doesn't kind of like tie in as well. I'm obviously not saying that it can't work, but I just think like for us, it was like a massive realization that, okay, we need to try and find the people who really fit us and fit the brand well. And then when we can grow that community, then we can obviously like use that, work with that more. And I think that just authentically builds the community around the brand and the people who follow the brand. As we know with lots of other, the UK brands, even brands like Sweats Collective, um, you know, their community, especially because they're an Aussie brand, but they obviously really want to tap into the UK scene and the London scene, and they um, obviously were doing great anyway. But I feel like obviously once they had that kind of cozy collection, and they obviously tapped into the right people, they built that kind of really solid foundation of the right people they wanted to, in terms of influencer wise, they got those right people on board, and then that obviously just really helped them just grow that product. And on top of the fact that it was probably already a good product that um, at this time was perfect. You know what I mean? Like it's again
Yeah, for
such a
sure.
hard game. You can have an amazing product and just drop it at the wrong time. I think you create your own luck in a lot of ways with stuff like this, and it might just be unfortunate that you release a product at the wrong time. Uh, but it could be that you just drop one thing and yeah, right time, right place. You obviously already working hard. Um, it's only a matter of time before like that item is going to be the kind of item that helps you grow as a brand. But yeah, obviously there's so many strategies, so many different marketing strategies that you can talk about. But yeah, I think influencer, um, obviously you've got kind of the Facebook ads, creative and stuff like that. But I think really just for us at the moment, mainly influencer marketing. Yeah, to be honest.
I think that that's one of the things that we spoke about quite a lot of. I think quite a lot of brands, especially big brands, just maybe look at numbers
Yeah,
and just be like, right, like you say, 100,000 followers, we'll just give it to them.
yeah,
It's gonna work. But then, like you say, if it's not the right fit, I think it's quite easy to tell when someone gets gifted something and it's really like not their style.
yeah,
It doesn't it it just looks out of place. Like it looks like, oh, I've been given this for free, but if it wasn't, I wouldn't ever wear it. It's not me. And I think another sort of challenge that we've sort of spoke about is when you're gifting stuff. Do you get the return on it? Like what as a brand owner do you want out of it? Like obviously a story post, is it enough? Do you
yeah,
want content taken in it that you could leverage? Obviously with the growth of TikTok now, video creative video creative you could use as a brand, I
of
guess, is
course.
even more important, especially if it's from an organic thing. Is Has that ever been a challenge for you of when you've gifted a piece and then been like, I really wanted more? Or have you I got an example where someone's done something for you and you've thought, wow, this smashed it, like
Yeah.
that's way above what I expected? What's that sort of balance been like for you?
I think it's still like a work in progress. Like I'm still trying to kind of figure that out. And like obviously again, we're still such a new brand. So we're trying to figure out what works best for us. I think definitely working you like being able to like leverage the content is essential. Um Again, just going back to what you were saying before when we were speaking about kind of the marketing side, it may sound obvious to some people, but you might give stuff to an influencer and they use that, get content for you, and then because they post it, you're like, okay, great. You might post it on your brand feed, but there's so much more you can do with that content as well that I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize that you can really build a catalog of content. Like you can use that for ad creative for ads on Facebook, you know, like, and these are, it's like kind of the kind of, what's the word? I don't know what the word is I'm trying to use. Anyway, it's just like the ecosystem of using it, I guess, is like once you can start to understand that, then obviously you can again leverage that better. But I think it's yeah, it's a tough question to be honest, because I think really it's an experimental stage for us really right now. It's still a case of who is the right person. I mean, I can tell you what I want the brand to be and what I think the brand to be, but again, with marketing, it's not about what you think it is. It's about what everyone else thinks it is. You know, like that's what you need to try and create is really what something that it's almost like a backwards thing. You know, again, I read this in a book called Zag, which is like a marketing book, and it was basically talking about some of these topics. It was just like your brand isn't what you think it is; it's what everyone else thinks it is, and like it's so true because you can, as you know, Nike can be trying to make you think something, but then if everyone just thinks something else, it doesn't matter how much they want to try and do that. You know, that's just how people perceive your brand. And so I think it's about kind of creating, doing your best to create whatever it is you're trying to create, and seeing how people respond to that, and whether they feel the same. You know, whether they can really like acknowledge it and feel like part of that. And so yeah, it's, again, like I said, work in progress. But such an exciting time because it feels like it's still such an open, like an open book, and this like empty canvas. So we haven't even touched, you know, we've got like a tiny little mark on this canvas that would hopefully be something really exciting that we can grow and build over the next 5, 10, 20 years. You know, I really feel passionate about like wanting the product to be something that you see someone wear in 20 years, or they pick it up in a vintage store and it's still quality. Like, you know, some of these Hanes t-shirts that are actually like really well built t-shirts from the US that were like 20, 30 years old. I bought some in LA, like from thrift shops and vintage stores, and they're still solid and they're lasting. And I love that because to me, it's like, there's no better way to like keep moving in an industry rather than just having like such fast fashion and just wasting the resources and just ultimately just destroying kind of, you know, the planet. Not trying to sound like I'm this super eco guy, but you know, just like it just feels like the right thing to do. And I want to create a product that people can like have and just lasts for ages. And like they have denim and it just lasts, doesn't go shit, and it just doesn't like fall apart. Like especially with t-shirts, it's such a basic, like such a kind of simple item. But if it's like really well made and it just like stands the test of time, then I don't know. That makes me feel good. I just knowing that. But yeah,
100%. Like I think with the way the world is now, I think I know you didn't want to bang on about eco and sustainability, but I think it's an important thing to consider. Like you say, it's that quality and the thought that you don't want to make something cheap and just be like, I want a quick markup on it. I'm
yeah,
just gonna uh, what I does it doesn't matter. As long as it looks like my brand, as long as it I don't care where it's made, as
yeah,
long as I can make my money on it. I think that's really been the shift that I think all brands have had to take
yeah,
because I think I don't know whether you think the same, but I feel like consumers are a lot more aware now of the quality of what the product is and have a certain
definitely.
level of expectation. I don't know whether that's just because, like you say, we're into clothes and into fashion, that it does cross our mind rather than the general consumer. But
Yeah,
I feel like people are definitely more aware now that if like you've got a heavyweight,
yeah,
well made in Portugal t-shirt versus something that's been made, in the Far East or in India,
yeah,
super cheap, mass quantity.
yeah,
Can we make as many as we want? Super thin, it's almost see through.
yeah.
I think people can definitely tell the difference now, and I don't know whether you think there's an expectation now that even for small brands that the expectation is quality.
It's not.
I don't know if that's what you perceive it as well, or
Yeah,
that's how I perceive it now.
definitely, man. 100%. I definitely feel like there's so much more focus on that. But the good thing about that is also just buying, like, people know that that's the standard in a way now. Like, people want a good quality product. They don't just want to buy fast fashion. There's always going to be people that are going to buy fast fashion. And I don't think you can probably ever remove that, because obviously there's also a lot of people that aren't necessarily like deeply into the fashion scene and they don't really care. So they just buy a t-shirt because it's a t-shirt they're going to wear. They don't really mind where it's from. So there's always going to be that. But I think for a growing industry, especially like the kind of generation we're in, people are way more conscious of like the quality of the product. Kind of ideally, the product comes from somewhere um, that's, or at least it's coming from some sustainable uh, place, or it's like, recycled or whatever. I think that's always just a plus. I think if you know you're buying into a really high quality product, and then you also find out that it's like there's been work that's gone into making that, as like the carbon footprint on it is as minimal as possible, then it's like it's a plus. You know what I mean? You might not be a purchase decision, like it might not change whether you're going to buy it or not. But I just think as a foundation of a brand, for me and for Targa, like I want that to just be the case. I want people to know that, and I just think it's important because it just feels selfish to like build something solely financially for a financial gain and then just destroy the planet and not care about that. And it's like we all live here, we all have to live on this place. So like, let's try our best not to make it any worse, and let's just. And it doesn't mean it can be any less cool, Like I just feel like the sickest brands in the world should all be trying to do it as sustainably as possible, because then it's just like everyone's going to follow suit and everyone's going to go, oh, they're doing that, like let's try and do that. I think another problem with that is the fact that because it's still such a new kind of thing, that technology, that it means the product is more expensive. And that, again, we had to face that when we had these organic cotton teas, made, because to produce that, it's just more expensive. And we could have chosen the cheaper cotton, still the same weight, but not organic. And we might have saved X amount on that and it would have been more profitable. But I really believe in bringing out, like, again, a high quality product that is also works alongside that sustainability aspect.
100%. Yeah, I think it's definitely, like you say, it's still kind of in its infancy in terms
Yeah.
of the technology, but I guess the more people invest in it, the more people demand it,
Yeah.
the more it'll happen, the more changes that will be made, and eventually that price will probably start to come down.
Yeah.
You'd
For
hope.
sure. For sure.
But I think there's still a way to go. But I think it's
Definitely.
like you say, it's an important consideration.
For sure.
Before I ask you some questions on, I know we briefly touched it on the future of the brand and what you want to do over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
What has been like the biggest sort of pinch me moment from the brand so far? Like, what is it that, a milestone? Is
Yeah.
it selling a certain product to someone? What has that really been the standout moment since launching the brand for you? Like the thing that you're most proud of?
Okay, hard
Was that a
question.
tough question?
Yeah, tough question. I think there's seeing, like, again, sounds crazy, and it's probably like just seeing people, like being on Shopify. Like, obviously, we run our site through Shopify. Seeing people on the website and seeing people buy your stuff there's no better feeling. I don't think that ever is going to ever change for anybody, whether you're George Heaton represent selling thousands of pieces a day. He must, you just feel the same way, because it's like this is your like baby. This is your thing that you're growing. This is something that you really like believe in. And I think, again, like anything creative, when you put yourself into it and the response from it is positive, it's like it's addicting. It's addictive, that feeling, and you just want to do better and have better. So I think really like the key for, well, one of the main things for us is definitely just having people support the brand. So cool. And then having artists, like we had some musicians like wearing the tees, and obviously like larger, like people with, again, people with who are kind of saying like celebrities or whatever, just getting the tee, wearing the tees, seeing them on people is so cool. And then I had a message from a friend of mine messaging me saying that they'd saw someone else like wearing the tee like on the street, and I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, what? Like, it's so random, and I still can't believe in my own head. I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. But obviously that's just, it's such a silly thing, but it's such a great feeling, like to know that there's, you're clearly doing something right for people to start recognizing the brand and start, buying into it. Even, again, that was still so small. So yeah, that's probably the main thing, and it's just very hopeful. Like, it's nice to kind of get that response. And again, as I said to you, like, just feels like we're still so early, and there's just this insane next 6 to 12 months that we're just going to be pushing the creative as hard as possible. Like, the storytelling is one of the main things that I really want to kind of what makes us super unique is that. So we're really focusing all our energy and time on now, like, not only putting out really good product, but like the story behind the product and how we release that product through visual storytelling is like by far, like, we want to make it some of the best in the world. Like, there's so many brands that and I don't want to say names, so I don't want to sound like, I'm not being negative to other brands or whatever, but there's some brands that have a lot of budget, big budgets, and the storytelling is like crazy how it's that bad. And you know, I think it's really important because it's what sells the product ultimately. It's like it's what gives people the feeling. Everything comes from a feeling, whether it's that you see someone wearing something that you really like and it mirrors you, and then you feel like you want to buy into that because you feel like you look good in that, or whether it's like a story or something that's really inspiring that makes you want to follow the brand. I think the best brands, in my opinion, in the world are the ones that can really convey and tell that story in the best way possible. Even just as simple as like Red Bull, they never sell their product; they sell the feeling of what it feels like to be, to what Red Bull means. It could be like someone jumping out of a plane or whatever, but it's the feeling that it gives you. And so I really want to tap into that. And I think there's a massive, massive gap in the market to really just create incredible content. And that's what kind of helps sell the brand. So that's like what we're going to be working on for the next 6 to 12 months as part of everything else. But yeah, like
I think the branding side of it is probably the most important thing, because people create a product, and like you say, the product can be really good. Like we mentioned earlier about the standard that sort of we expect now. But if it's a cool design, it's well made. Yeah, but what does it mean? Like, how do you tell that story? How do you give that and portray that feeling? And that's probably one of the hardest things for brands to do and to find, because I guess it comes from, like you say, your experiences, your environment of what you want it to represent. I think like you've got a really good thought process of what the brand can mean and what that future looks like. And I think having that so early is key, because like you see a lot of brands pop up and you think, okay, looks a nice product. It looks, you've just started it. It follows maybe a similar sort of aesthetic to the norms, but what really sets you apart, like what really is the differentiator? Because I think we're in an environment that I'm sure you're well aware of, that it's so competitive, and there's so many small brands that having that story is probably what's going to set you apart.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Again, that is why our process on it is like that, as in, because again, if we've got you can only leverage so much. And so if you don't have a financial leverage, or you don't have if you're not necessarily connected to lots of like well-known people, or, for most people who probably start a brand, they're probably wondering like, how do I reach more people? And I think with the power of Instagram and TikTok, like it's a free platform. And I'm even telling this to myself because I know I need to get way more like on that scene, because it's like, it's a free platform that you can literally showcase to millions of people for free. Like, and I think it's just about putting time and energy into like really creating that like really good content. Because like you're saying, you tell that story. It could just be even the simplest piece of video, but like if you can convey that story well and give people a reason to want to engage in that video, engage in the brand, like there could be 50 more customers. It could be 20, it could be 5, it could be 100 from one video, And if you can just create that consistently, like that's ultimately, I think, how you're going to grow the brand in this kind of day and age now. Not just financially, I mean? I think, again, as you probably know, you can pump out Facebook ads and pump that, and it probably will help you grow your brand because you're going to be seen by loads of people. But it's ultimately like the same thing, but you're not having to pay for it if you don't pay for ads on TikTok. I mean, if you're just organically posting good videos, you just hope that one, sticks, and then it gets you there. And
do you find that is a challenge to want to be consistently posting, like having quality content? Do you think that's a fine balance of like having that quality but trying to keep up with it? Do you find that a pressure on yourself, or do you think sometimes you might just want to just post any random bullshit just to give people an insight to you, or do you
Yeah.
think that there is a real challenge there of keeping of a consistent high level? Because I've seen like a lot of brands of you either go sort of one way or the other, where
Yeah.
it's a lot of super high edited, super polished content, but trying to maintain that level is difficult.
Of
It's
course.
hard and it sets a standard. But do you also feel that the more organic, especially with the way TikTok is now, of like it's about the person, it's about you, what do you stand for?
Yeah.
Do you think that more organic, more here's me in front of my phone recording a video, do you think that works, or do you think it's a balance of between the two? Like, how do you see that playing out for you going forward?
Well, I think firstly, I think it's definitely a balance between both. I think it's in the ideal situation, you can produce high quality content and and reasonably like consistently. I don't think it's fair to put the expectation on yourself, especially if you're not in a team with a lot of staff, or if you're still at a point where you have yourself or you have a couple of people helping you out or whatever. Um, to put like really high quality video content out there every single day, it's really really tough. Or if you've got you're a really good videographer or um, filmmaker and you have that kind of skill set, if you don't have that, it's going to be really really tough. So I feel like having a balance. I definitely think you need to obviously have the personal brand side. People want to follow you. They don't just want to see this empty brand with no face to it. I think, even just using like represent as a kind of example, and even brands like Cole Buxton, I feel like most people who know like brands like Cole Buxton know Johnny Wilson and know Cole, or at least the majority of their community are all there because they like